Hey everybody, I hope you guys are having a good day today. Welcome back to Poker Mind Expansion, episode 7. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about. Actually, I have no idea. I'm gonna lie if I start saying I know what I'm gonna talk about. I don't actually have like a topic, but I'm waiting for games, so I wanted to talk. Basically, I think there's like a great deal that we have to learn through various strategies and strategists, military generals in history when it comes to strategy. Because poker is a strategy game, of course, right? There's no luck involved in poker, obviously. Our decisions versus our opponent's decisions equal our expectation. Now, say if the rake is so high that there's a large deficit for everybody, maybe nobody wins. But in terms of where our expectation goes, where our money goes, it simply is a function of our decisions. We cannot make money without clicking buttons, fold, call, raise, etc. Now, we have a lot to learn from various creative thinkers, generals, chess players, etc. And much more so than the poker educational websites. One individual that comes to mind who is my favorite teacher by far is Phil Galfond. He is absolutely magnificent. He is so articulate. I've never heard someone put ideas about poker into words like him. Uh, every single time I listen to him, I realize there's so much more to think about. Like, this guy is fucking absolute genius, motherfucker. Absolutely brilliant human being he is. I don't have the capacity to think about poker in any way like him. So I'm not talking about an individual coach making a training video. These things can be very useful. What I'm specifically talking about is just going to a training site and clicking on random videos for entertainment and watching them and assuming this has anything to do with getting better. This is a very large deception we play upon ourselves. A 50 NL regular, a 25 NL regular, a 2 NL regular, a 2000 NL regular. I don't want to say anything about 2000 because I have not played there, only live, and I don't have enough experience to make comments on high stakes quite yet. But anyways, these people are basically just infinite space and awareness. If you want to be. Everybody has the seed to expand their mind to be able to think in multiple dimensions as far as strategy is concerned. But we want to put ourselves inside of a box to feel safe. We put smoke in front of our eyes. Knowledge that tells us that what we did was okay relative to what others do. But of course, this presupposition is to what our opponents are doing. I say this every single episode. Because it's the thing that has to be understood, because 99% of society, at least like 97% of human beings, I cannot say specifically about statistics, but I would say probably closer to 99 or more percent, are still perceiving reality through this cause and effect framework, which is absolutely not possible to think deeply about poker if one has not realize that everything is mutually arising and this conflict. I'm going to put this fire out. I'm going to cut this branch off of the tree. Well, you still have the tree there, and the juices are going to grow back and make two branches in another place. So it's not so simple. And there's a large misconception that we can watch training videos and we can find a particular strategy or a particular trick that we haven't seen before and get that and put it into our arsenal. And this will somehow be good for us. But actually, we need to have the framework in order to understand why these things are the case. At some point, I would like to start to teach a little bit of theory, poker theory as well, make some of those videos. And by the way, if anybody has any interest in that, I would love you to let me know. Not via a like, because I might not really know if that's for the video, but maybe via a comment that you would like to know, or that you would like me to make some videos on theory, because I think that there's a fair amount of good theoretical content out there, but I think it could be made a little bit more practical and a little bit more streamlined, and then we can talk about specifically the mistakes, the biases, the misconceptions that the poker community has when it comes to using PioSolver and these sort of things. However, this is not actually my interest whatsoever. I don't particularly care about that. I'm much more interested in talking about mind expansion, but just for the sake of the viewer and having them become more interested in these mind expansion talks, I've decided to do Play and Explains, and I think that talking about theory can be very, very important, because we have to be very clear. A hand, again, and its EV is simply a function of how we play and how our opponent plays. There can be no statements that are general without a specific context to the meaning and why we think, for instance, playing aggressively is better than playing passive. Well, why do we think playing aggressively is better than playing passively? Where does that come from? And I'm not saying that these things are not the case. What I'm saying is that when we are in a hand, there's nothing general. We're playing against a real life human being. So all these concepts that we collect and all this knowledge that we collect, very important. However, we need to be very conscious of what we are doing when we are playing, who we are playing. Strictly speaking, there's not even a such thing as aggressive. There's no way to quantify this word aggressive, right? So we use the word aggressive, then someone can think in this great general way, aggressive. But what is the meaning and what is the hand? So we are on a flop A7-2 button versus big blind, and we think that the big blind is aggressive. But is it aggressive in this A7-2 spot where he finds enough check raises, he floats so much, he probe river bluffs? Is this aggressive? Or are we saying simply pre-flop he's a little bit wider? Or what does aggressive mean? This is very, very important. This only comes from the framework of what is considered to be balanced by Nash equilibrium standards, some of the models that we call aggressive, or a description of how we view our opponents playing compared to how we view ourselves as well. That's also something. And in fact, if we're actually solving to try to make EV, not simply win the hand or something, or avoid losing a big pot, or whatever models we've studied, which are simply to break even. Now, of course, we can say, well, I think people are not doing this, so therefore I'm going to deviate and do that. But we're only looking at one node of the game tree, and again, we cannot really make so many definitive statements based on one node of the game tree. We need to think about the leaves. In addition to that, one of the large errors that happens at low and mid stakes is that people believe that these tricks that they found within PioSolver and deviations that people make are somehow making them play poker better. It doesn't mean that strategy versus strategy against their opponents, they are not going to be winning, but output has nothing to do with your actual understanding of how the game works. Absolutely nothing. We poker players cannot afford to simply repeat words in our minds when we were playing, well, this is this board, this is what GTO says, this is what I do. It's so easy to see the subtle little deviations that people make where they're on A7-2 and they're like, I'm just going to go like 40% instead of 30% with a good hand. I'm going to go 2/3 on this board. On Ace-King-3, well, I'm going to go 1/3 because I don't think my opponent is doing this or that. But once you get to even like a slightly higher level, this entire thing just gets destroyed because all of the counters that you're learning, all of the tricks your opponents above you have probably learned at some level, and they're going to exploit the shit out of you. If you are not able to recognize why you're doing what you're doing and what you are actually doing and what a counter is against what you are doing. We cannot be identified with a particular strategy. This is why it's very hard. I used to play 200, 500 Zoom on stores for quite a while. 100, maybe a little bit less, 500. Played a bunch on GG. I think the 500 Zoom was too tough for me. But even 1K and stuff. And actually, I did okay, and I kind of understood what was going on mostly because I used logic. And I think that a lot of the people that I played against used very similar logic. When I went to Macau, when I went to Vegas, when I went to Los Angeles, I was playing up to 10K and L, 1K, 2K, 5K, 10K. I didn't understand what the fuck was going on because I memorized a bunch of strategies to play against regs and I didn't even think deeply about how to play poker or play against recreational players. It did not go very well. In fact, I'm not sure if I definitely lost like 50K or something in Macau, I think. But even overall live poker, I think I'm down a decent amount of money. Because, and it's not because like, oh, I ran bad. It's because I don't fucking have a clue that the strategies that I'm playing online that are so defensive, it's not how you make EV. I know people that if I played them heads up, they would get absolutely destroyed. And they fucking take like 5 times more than I could ever dream of out of a fucking live game. So these skill levels cannot be compared, and it certainly can hurt my ego, and I can say, of course, that's not true. I'm okay at poker, blah, blah, blah. But no, there's so many different skill sets, and there's so many different aspects to this game. So we need to be solving for how to make EV, not simply break even with these models, where we try to categorize players to make us feel safe, and we have models about how to play against them. We have to actually understand them, because we call them a label. It's useful to categorize and memorize these categories at some level, where if we're playing in very large player pools where we're not playing against the same people often, and we think that, you know, we're trying to move up in stakes and use these tricks to make money, whatever. But we have to think deeply about the meanings of these labels, even if we're going to use them. Now, if we work at a grocery store and we stock shelves and it says pantry over here, well, we don't have to think about those categories. It's not important. It has no relevance. But when it comes to poker, these are not objective ideas. These ideas are simply coming from our own knowledge. There's no objective meaning of bluff. A new poker player will have a perception of what bluff means. After he plays 100,000 hands, his perception of what bluff means will be different. His perception after 1,000,000 hands will be different. This terminology, such as something like aggressive or tight, we absolutely have to abandon if we want to go deeper into ourselves and into our opponents. And the only way to go into our opponents is to understand ourselves. There's no other way. Now, there are many foolish people who think that they can just think about their opponent without thinking about themselves, without realizing that their opponent and their knowledge of their opponent is simply a projection of their own knowledge, fundamental. I've said this 10,000 times, but it's so important because it's so easy to just look at a hand and think about our opponent and not spend hours and hours off the table just considering how we ourselves play. Excuse me. Have we asked the question of what aggressive even means, and then we can look at a particular hand history and see what that means relatively speaking. Ooh, I have a recreational player who just set. Give me one moment. I need to play until he leaves. So, for instance, we are playing a recreational player, or no, sorry, we're not playing a recreational player. I'm so sorry. I'm playing a recreational player at the moment. That's why I said that. For instance, we were playing a regular, and we deem him as aggressive, and say the reason why we call him aggressive, we're not looking at the entirety of his game, right? We focus in on one stat, and we say, this is aggressive, right? We say, let's say it's his 3-bet is like more than optimal. Say optimal is like 10 or whatever, I don't know exactly the format, but say it's 10, and say he's like 12. And then there may be an idea, well, this is how we play against aggressive people. It doesn't mean anything. What jack dog shit to even make a label out of this nonsense. Now we could talk about like, where is he aggressive? How much money is he putting in by river? Is he aggressive pre, and then does he expect people to just like call, fold, and he barrels off? Or is he just aggressive pre? Is he checking a whole bunch of flops because he thinks that people are folding too much pre and then they get to flop too strong? And then they're kind of giving up and he's delayed. Like, what is this guy actually doing? What is the meaning? He 3-bets more than optimal. He 3-bets more than optimal. What does that mean? Does that mean that we don't RFI as much? Let's ask this question. Why does he 3-bet at a higher frequency than at equilibrium? We have to get into our opponent's minds, not simply see some fucking statistic and then memorize some solution. We literally have to understand our opponents. And it's impossible for a robot poker player who does not understand themselves to get into their opponent's head. This is why people have such a hard time, and this is why they look to game theory, because they don't understand themselves. So they look for strategies, they memorize things. They don't understand they're playing against a human being with the same fears, the same insecurities, the same ignorance that they have. Most of the rigs, if you're playing poker, you're very unlikely to be much worse than any rigs at your stakes. If you were, you probably would not be there. And if they were so much better, they probably would not be there. So factually speaking, we're probably not that much better or worse. Even if we're very insecure and we feel like they're much better. Or we're very arrogant and we feel we are much better. I mean, if we feel that we're probably very foolish, we should probably just move up and see how that works up. And see if this arrogance is still founded. And then look at our results. I mean, you know, there's a lot of variance, but it speaks volumes. We need to attempt to find a solution to the entirety of the game, not simply one small node. This attempt to find a small solution destroys our ability to continue going on and on and on and making new connections between our unconscious knowledge that we've learned many years ago and currently our schema today. Because all of the knowledge that we've learned about poker, this idea that I've heard people say, I can't remember this, I can't remember that. It means that your brain is not very connected. It means that when you are in a certain situation that does not trigger this association, you cannot remember it. But if you're in a different context, you will probably create the association. It's not that you don't have it. It's not that you cannot remember it. What is this mechanism of remembering? It's not like someone is tapping us on the shoulder and saying, remember, remember. So we ourselves are the one that is remembering, and the mechanism of the mind, memory, these memories are triggered by the associations that we have based on whatever is in front of us, whatever the board is, whatever our opponents have done. Now, there are many methods to increasing our awareness, and these are nothing new. These have been around for many thousands of years. It did not start with any particular master. Over our human history, it's been said over and over and over down the centuries. We're not discussing anything new. This is not a new truth about poker particularly. It's actually mostly just about the human mind. Not mostly. It is completely about the psyche. It is completely about the ego. It is completely about the sense of self. And the cognitive bias that we see when we study psychology and we see, wow, humans are very biased. And everybody says, yeah, other people are biased, but they don't understand that they themselves are the biased one. And it's too painful to look. Because when we are around other people, we want to feel good, of course. It's beautiful. We want love. We want to be appreciated for our skill. This is all very important stuff. I mean, it's not like actually important in terms of the well-being of our body, but this is what we have been taught is important, and therefore our nervous system remembers this. And if this is a priority, then we certainly are going to be making decisions along with this kind of belief. Now, if we are children in the sand having fun, then poker is a very fun game because everything is like, wow, I didn't know that was happening. Holy cow, I just learned this, well, I made a mistake. But this idea that there's a problem with mistakes, you cannot simply listen to someone on YouTube say, mistakes are no problem, it's fine. And then you feel better about your mistake, and then you go and you make it, and then you have another emotional reaction. And you try to remember the words, I tried to remember the words that Phil Galfond told me when he said, like, mistakes are okay. It doesn't work that way because the operating system, which actually can perceive a mistake, is the problem. It's not the context, it's not the situation that is a mistake. There's no such thing as a mistake. There's only physical objects in reality. For instance, in front of me, there is a mouse, there's a computer screen, there's a microphone, there's a telephone. There's no mistakes. If I say that it was a mistake to drop my telephone, what actually happened, as far as physics are concerned? Now, we can express what happened in language. We can call this thing telephone, and we will all agree telephone, and we can say the word drop means what? So we have this idea of what does drop mean? Does it mean I smashed it, right? Everybody will have a different mental image. Does it mean I tripped and then it fell out of my hand? This word drop is different. Mind expansion is absolutely fundamental. Because we've been taught that we need to be very serious. If we have a mistake, we need to feel bad. The operating system, the mind that can even see mistake is the problem. If you can perceive mistakes, it's not a real thing. It's just our perception. If we can perceive a mistake with our perception, then it means that we're not very conscious. It doesn't mean that we don't say, well, I could have done this better. In fact, there's no time to even do that. Certainly, post-game, we can think about these ideas about how to make EV, but the majority of our real thinking as far as that's concerned needs to be off of the table. There are people that are even like playing and thinking that somehow like not studying, just playing is going to get them better. But they don't understand that this fight or flight response and this nervous system hijacking, it's not even like something that can be conscious because I say that, but this is the ordinary state of consciousness, meaning that we see a situation and we just have all this knowledge about the situation. We don't understand that there are plethoras, more depth. And of course we can imagine that there's someone out there that doesn't have it, but certainly we ourselves. But if we can ask that question, if we're not playing like 5KNL regularly, then we probably are not particularly good. I think that's very, very important to consider. But again, good depends on your definition, because I'm not looking around and saying like what is good and what is bad compared to other people statistically. This is how the education system works. They say if you are better than other people, then you can feel good about yourself. If you compete against your peers and you have better grades than them, then you can do okay. This I don't really agree with. I think it's very ugly, this kind of competitive game, because it has to do with me. I am better than you. It doesn't actually have to do with the pursuit that we are talking about, which is knowledge, which is understanding, which is actually mastery of poker. So mind expansion has always been the same. And only expressions differ. This poker is only one way of expressing it. But if you talk to Albert Einstein, he will not talk to you about poker. In fact, he's probably far more interested in the universe and life and his own thoughts, rather than thinking about, say, dramas in the poker community. Rather than watching a training video because we enjoy someone's personality. Rather than going to a study group because we enjoy when people say, yeah, you're doing a good job, but this, yeah, you're doing a good job. They don't know if we're doing a good job. They don't have the capacity to know. They are not the one that can know for us. We cannot know ourselves. We can only continue to make decisions in a direction that will improve our understanding, but the mind very often wants tricks. What Jesus said is the same that Buddha said. What Buddha said is the same that Krishna said. What Krishna said is the same as Dalai Lama, Eckhart Tolle, etc. All of these different people. The expressions are always different, though. Jesus Christ, who went to India and became enlightened, certainly an enlightened bodhisattva by the Buddhist tradition standards, which means that he was self-realized, he was loving awareness, had to speak a certain language to the Jews, because this perception, the dream that they were in, was that there was an interventionist deity God that loved this, that loved that. They fucking killed this guy simply because he was telling them about the nature of themselves, and he was trying to tell them, hey, you're not separate from the universe, it's just that your brain has created a separate sense of self from existence. And that's not the way it works, and that's why you're in so much pain. When you realize that this ego is an illusion, then you're completely free of this thing. But there are many different expressions. Buddha absolutely did not do this. In fact, he would not even answer questions on God. So all these different teachers will always speak a different language, but the point is always mind expansion. It's always what it is. It's always to be able to expand our understanding. It's not about spirituality. It's just that the majority of Homo sapiens have needed some sort of metaphysical beliefs in order to protect themselves from other thoughts in their mind. Like, wow, I'm walking and there could be someone that harms me. Well, if I imagine that there's some man in the sky that's going to protect me, and I say that this man is going to protect me, it's much easier to live. Of course, there's no man in the sky doing things. If one is this delusional, it's probably going to be very challenging for them to play poker, especially if they hold on to the belief that there is this man in the sky, and yet still there's some logic in poker. There's a very, very large contradiction, and they can create millions of stories as to why this is the case, but they're always lying to themselves. They do know on some level that there's something deeper than their experience. Just as most 25 and L players can sit there and say, I'm so good at it, I'm betting 1/3 and I'm doing very well and I have a 4BB win rate post-rake, which is fantastic, right? Especially Zoom, very nice win rate, very good job, my friend. But we have to go beyond our current beliefs. We have to be going beyond and challenging our knowledge. We cannot be a prisoner of the past. So the structure is different, the language is different from these different teachers, the cultures are different, their ways of saying things are different, naturally, of course. Because they're different people, different individuals speaking different languages to people, not in terms of language, English, whatever, but in terms of the dreams that the perceivers are having. For instance, if someone is dreaming about Allah and someone is dreaming about Jesus Christ, they're the same thing, right? These are just like hallucinations, that they're just thoughts that people have in their mind, and they don't know how to differentiate a thought versus reality. Now, during these series, I will continue to reference many timeless masters, including even our more contemporary teachers as well, like Ramana Maharshi, Osho, Neem Karoli Baba, My teacher, who's Artem Boitsov, I think is the most clear that I found in terms of his writings and directness, though it's very hard to read because it's so direct that it hurts my feelings a lot, because it smashes a lot of my beliefs. Sadhguru is someone who is certainly very deeply realized and has a lot of insight to say, a very wise individual. A lot of these people I'll be commenting on, I'll be trying to bring up their quotes in regards to poker and talking about mind expansion and why it's relevant. These people are not just insane gurus or whatever, and they're not just spiritual either gods. They actually are simply people who understand creativity, who understand love, who understand the pursuit of life. And it's not like I'm a poker player, I'm identified with poker, but like, no, I'm a fucking human being actually. And like, the fact that someone actually takes their time to watch a YouTube video about acquiring knowledge for poker, it's very, very cool. I mean, someone could be going on YouTube and watching the Rolling Stones for hours and watching their live concerts, and that could be far more pleasurable than listening to talks about mind expansion. So like, one actually who takes the time to think about this, there's a lot to be gained. But truth has to be absolutely certain. It cannot be approximately certain. It cannot be a half-truth. There's only one way, not in terms of one way up to the mountain. There are many different paths, but the summit is one. It cannot be known through a medium. I cannot say, yes, this chili sauce is very spicy. You have to taste it yourself. You have to know directly with your own 5 sense perceptions, with your own taste buds. You cannot simply hear my words, it's spicy, and then create an image of what spicy meant for you in the past, and create a model and say, yes, this is how it is. You need to taste it yourself. One needs to know directly, immediately. We cannot simply create a belief from other people's words. That yes, I see Tom Dwan playing this hand and I see him bluffing, and because I see him bluffing and I think this guy's weak, I know how to bluff people now. Now I'm going to go to my table and I'm going to beat them. This has nothing to do with understanding game theory. It has nothing to do with understanding psychology. It has nothing to do with understanding our opponents. I'm going to watch a training video and I'm going to see someone playing and I'm going to assume that somehow I can play the same way without actually having the totality of their knowledge. Impossible. Certainly there are things that we can take away and learn, always. From anybody, in fact. Certainly we have a lot to learn, even from recreational players, if they were streaming and they were playing 5-0. Shit, we can actually see their whole cards. It will give us tons of insight into the thought process of a recreational player and why they do what they do. As a poker player, there's this idea, oh, I don't want to watch weaker people because XYZ, I'm better than them. Absolutely disgusting nonsense. These are the people that you need to be making money from. This is how we get our EV. But the mind always wants to compare itself to other people and think of how it's better than others. A 25-NL player thinks that he's so good, and he compares himself to other people. A 50-NL player, who does he compare himself to? Does a 200-NL player think that he's amazing? Of course not. Or maybe he does. But it's not about the skill level that we're playing, it's about the love for the game. This is another thing. It's not about moving up in stakes. There's no ambition involved. Simply, when you are playing, this game is about mastery. We can play fucking 10-0. It makes absolutely no difference, even if we're playing terrible opposition. It's not like you need to play tough opposition to get better. If you're playing weaker opposition, it's an amazing opportunity to think about how to exploit them very deeply. Not just play your little GTO strategy to move up in stakes and play against better people. No, it's a very good opportunity to think about, wow, this guy, I could probably be making like 3 BB against him, and unfortunately I'm only making 1.5 because I'm unwilling to really try to exploit him because I'm too scared of consequences. So it's like that. I'm playing like fucking like what 200-0. These people are just clicking. They're not even trying. They're not even trying to bluff. They're not even trying to play a strategy. They just see their hand and they think, what does my opponent have? Well, I do this. They're not playing a strategy. They might think about what their opponent thinks about them. They might go a little bit more deep than that, but it's not strategic. It's more so just playing tricks against tricks against tricks. There's nothing that can be related about your experience of reality to another through language, especially about your perception about poker. So we have to be willing to explore ourselves. Now, we've been told this since the very beginning that meditation is selfish, that we have to be more focused on serving other people, being productive for the society, giving something back. I'm so sorry, but this is just a conditioning. It's absolute nonsense. No other people even exist. Only you exist, and you create all the people, and you yourself, your self-image does not even exist. It only exists as a collection of thoughts. So until you go beyond your current identity and you wake up to reality, and then you see how deep poker actually is, it will be very challenging. When the two poles become one, that is consciousness. Consciousness is the realization that we are actually poker. We are not separate from poker. We are a brain. Where does poker exist? It exists as a collection of agreements. We are poker by definition. If we become conscious, our brain will be far beyond any modern supercomputer by quadrillions of miles. Look at modern robots. They can barely even pick up forks and spoons at dining restaurants. The problem is that the human brain believes that just because we give an algorithm solving for zero, that's so amazing. That has nothing to do with poker. If you're believing that this myth, then you're simply dreaming the tale that the training sites have sold you. And I suggest that you run very far away from them and sit with yourself and think about the game in its totality. This is an exterior medium we are using on YouTube. There are a lot of different traditions like Tantra, Yoga, Taoism, all the great secret teachings of the world. They only basically try to make you become more aware of your feminine, your masculine, who you are, the two poles. It's not like there are any men or women that exist in the world. Femininity, masculinity, these traits. Sure, some people have penises and some people have vaginas. But these are simply referring to the two poles. Tantrikas, or what they call Shiva and Shakti, or Taoists they say yin and yang. The polarity between the positive and the negative is us. The day and night is us. But these terms that the education system has taught us makes us create a box around these concepts so we know them. And we think that they become disconnected from everything else. All of our knowledge is connected. When we were 3 years old playing in the sand, that experience certainly influences how we play poker at the table today. Absolutely. Because that experience is part of what we are. But the brain often thinks that these past experiences, what has happened around us, has nothing to do with us. We are just ourselves. The sky did not help us with its rain survive. The trees have not helped us give us oxygen. We are on this pursuit ourselves. I mean, mostly this is just cultural over the last 200 years, actually, where we have basically been taught, at least in the West, that what we do, if we get born into this situation, it's our job to improve. If we don't have enough money for medical care, it's our fault. We are not good enough people. We deserve it. It's like absolute nonsense, inhumane, disgusting bullshit. They'll look back at our Western society in 500 years and think that it's the most barbarous, disgusting thing. I guarantee you. Right now, this Western society says, oh yes, slaves are so bad, racism is so bad, da 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 da. But they're much worse right now. I mean, they're not worse in terms of violence, no, but I think in terms of their hypocrisy and their open hypocrisy about it, in terms of living in this hierarchical society where we say that some people are better than other people and some people deserve this just simply because they were born in a certain place, absolutely inhumane and disgusting. But this is the way that the education system teaches. And it's a very safe way to feel. When we look at our neighbor, we don't have to cry and say, oh my God, this guy doesn't have a house. If we think it's his fault, it makes us feel safer. Thank God it's his fault. At least we can do something about ourselves and it can make us feel better. But in reality, it's not really true. A lion does not get born through some choice of his own. He simply is born and he is experiencing life, and when he's hungry, it's not like there's 7-Eleven to give him food. He's just going to eat. It's not like this deer has been asked to be born. He's just born and he sucks his mother's breast and he gets milk and he walks around, and then a lion one day comes and he's eaten and it's over. It's not, things just happen. There is no cause and effect. So the brain has to understand strategy in terms of mutually arising, but the society, the education system has trained us to think that when we get on King Jack 5, button versus big blind, we can only think in terms of he's doing this, therefore I'm going to do that. We don't have millions of thoughts that are simultaneously there, and we think, well, he's doing this, he's doing that, I'm doing that, he's going to do that, he's going to do that, and then we make our decisions. We're using a supercomputer, and people because of the way that the society works. If anybody ever had any amount of intelligence, they would realize how disgusting and cruel it is that we have human beings that wish to harm other human beings. What's even more disgusting is that there are people who vote for politicians to do this, and they actually believe it's. I'm not saying it's disgusting of the people. It's actually not a moral thing of who's better or worse. It's not about that. I'm just saying that the act of spending time on meaningless dramas on TV, on talking about transgender words or whatever bullshit nonsense we're talking about. I'm not saying that hurting other people's feelings are bad. I'm saying that when you are in fucking Africa and you don't have enough food and you're looking for water, you don't have time for this nonsense. Only when you get into a society that has time to think about its own sense of self and how it relates to other people and wanting to advance the self-image and the ego compared to other people, will these nonsensical games even matter at all? And people are so scared of death and people are so scared of things happening, but they don't think about anybody else in the world. Thinking about 30% of the world, more than 30%, is barely even surviving as far as paycheck to paycheck. Americans, how much money do they make per year? How much money does the West make per year? What about other countries where they aren't making shit? It has nothing to do with these situations and having an opinion. The opinion does not matter. The point is understanding that our education system is not here to give us truth. Our education system is here to diminish our intelligence, to make us into robots that memorize what to do on different flops without realizing that, oh no, this guy, Queen Jack 5 or King Jack whatever. This guy on the river, we know that he tank folds a lot of times on triple. We've seen him do it versus other people. He probably will do it versus us as well, unless we think that our image is somewhat massively different from the pool and say we don't think so. So we don't care about this, like, okay, sure, this hand is a mixed strategy, but if we think he's way over call folding on the aggregate of boards and we don't think that he's going to adjust and this is a reasonable mix, we can up the frequency and just triple it. We don't need to get to the turn and randomize. We don't need to get to the flop and randomize. But we have to think about this game in its entirety. Poker, we need to focus our energy on being present in each hand. Absolutely 1000% present in each moment. But people are more interested in playing 500 or 1,000 hands an hour, which is absolute, brain dead. Unless you're really good and you know what you're doing. But if you're trying to improve, like, your improving should very often happen in game. And what should happen is you should be very focused in game, and then you should take time off of the table an hour or two after you play to integrate what has happened. Why is it so hard to sit still and think in depth rather than this robotic click as fast as I can? It's because we've been trained that the more that we do, the better human beings that we are through our education system that needs slaves. What are we even trying to accomplish? We must first go inside of ourselves to the most deepest, utmost core of our being and ask, what do we actually want? Do we want to get better at poker, or do we want to feel better about ourselves? Jesus Christ himself said again and again, repent. I think he says ye as well. I don't really know what ye is. I think ye means you back in those days, but I wasn't there, and I don't really know the translations very well. But I remember him saying ye. And the world has become very, very confused about this word repent. Certainly the Christians really misunderstand it. It always means to go back inside, to repent, go back inside. It does not mean repentance for misdeeds. It has nothing to do with misdeeds. The word repent means to return, to go back in. Turn back, go inside yourself and meditate. That's what Jesus was saying because he was enlightened. He was saying meditate. Meditate after a poker session. If Jesus Christ had poker cards, I guarantee you he was a cool dude. He would have fucking played poker. If Buddha had poker back in the day, he would have played poker because it's a cool fucking game. Meditation isn't allowing. We simply sit and we watch what thoughts about poker happen. We don't try to control. We don't try to say, yes, this is the right thing. That's the right. We simply allow all the thoughts because this mechanism of this is right is simply the valve that we shut to turn off all the other thoughts because we don't want to deal with our insecurities of what if it wasn't right. What hands actually come to mind when we sit in the game? And why do they come to mind? Are we insecure about it? And are we going to shout louder and say, no, we were right? Are we actually going to look at our insecurity and why this hand keeps coming up in our mind? We don't need to find solutions. We just need to allow all the thoughts to come, but it's way more hard to do nothing and observe because the mind wants to do, go, 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 go. This is positive, this is negative, this is good, this is bad. But actually we want to understand the inner workings of our mind. This is absolutely fundamental. The entire process of meditation is actually observing the way that our mind works. That's the whole point. It's observing why we make the decisions that we do, rather than improving the decisions, understanding the underlying subconscious decisions and process that we have. Very important. So the question may often come up, how do we end up getting better? How do we expand our mind? How do we see what this mind expansion is? There's no how to see what it is, because if you are carrying a how, you will certainly distort it. That which is needs no method, needs no technique to see it. Just silence, a transparent stillness, a nothingness, with no thought in the mind, just observation. There may be thoughts, but we are the observer. We are not the thinker. We are also the thinker. All of these processes happen inside of us. But the thinker wants a solution. This is not our goal. We are not looking for a solution. We are looking to understand ourselves, because understanding ourselves leads to knowledge of how our opponents play and what they do and why they do what they do. But it's difficult to understand ourselves because it's scary, because it shows that all these structures that we've placed around ourselves of Pio-Solver are actually not really so true. But neither is it true for our opponents. This is where the edge is to be had. No mind is needed whatsoever for poker. When I say mind, I'm talking about the part of the brain that imagines things that are not real and forgets that they are imagined. For instance, someone talks about poker, but poker is not real, right? Poker is just agreement about how we play cards. So someone might think, I am separate. I'm going to play poker. I'm separate from poker. I don't understand poker. As if poker is something that's objective to be understood. And as if this perceiver can have the capacity to know what understanding is when they are saying they don't understand. So by definition, they don't have the capacity to know even what it is or what it isn't. You will see what your thoughts allow you to see. Your thoughts prevent you from reaching deeper inside the different fragments of knowledge that we've collected, the millions of hands that we've played. We have so much knowledge, and we are only conscious of such a minuscule amount when we are playing, and all that stuff is saved within us. We will be very surprised to know that modern psychological researchers have come to know that about 98% of reality is not even allowed to enter our being. The mind only allows about 1 to 2%. And this is not my opinion. This is what modern psychologists from universities today say. So whatever we see is only 2% of reality, because the mind only allows us to see 2% of reality. And modern psychologists are talking about the 99% of people, 97 to 99%, that are currently believing that their ego, that their identity is real, not realizing that, oh yes, all identities are a false premise, all personalities are an idea on top of physical reality. A human cannot have a personality. They simply have actions, and then someone who creates a system to label these things will call it a personality. But in the ultimate reality, of course, there are no personalities, because there's no time. You cannot say that, what are you going to do? You're going to watch this guy for 50 years and say, this is how he is, this is how he is, because you want to put boxes on people. Every single individual is so absolutely unique, there's no possibility of even creating categories for people. And this is what I mean, is that our society is not trained in a way for deep thinkers. They disincentivize deep thinkers. They don't want deep thinking, because all war will end, all violence will end. All victimless crime will no longer be punished. We will go into a much more humane society. What we are right now is absolutely disgusting. And it's not because we're bad, it's because we're very stupid, very foolish, and we don't understand ourselves. But the one that doesn't understand themselves will shout louder and scream louder and say, of course I do. Yes, I do. Let's kill people because they say we don't understand. And they don't understand. It's just like, it's, my feelings are hurt, and then I'm going to... Most violence is completely irrational. And it's because people don't understand that this pain that they're experiencing and the idea I'm going to hurt them and then it's going to take away my pain, this pain is simply their own emotional system. You cannot hate another person. You can only hate yourself. Because the other person is simply a body that you're looking at. You don't know them. You don't know anything about them. Maybe you've seen them for 4 minutes and then your brain has generated a model of, yes, these people are good. Yes, these people are bad. Why? Because simply I was born into a Christian family, and when I go around these people who are atheists, I feel very, very uncomfortable. So my brain says, I know everything about atheists. This is the model of atheists, and this is what they are. Of course, it's not real. We don't even know ourselves. How are we going to know someone else? So this education that we have received within the society, very, very, very difficult to change unless we're willing to go inside. The mind is a judge and allows only that which suits it, that which fits in its current schema, that which nourishes it, strengthens it. It does not allow anything that goes against it. For example, if you're listening to me, your mind will only allow that which helps to strengthen your opinions, your ideologies. If you do not like GTO, you will hear one thing. If you like GTO, you will hear a completely different thing. If you've come here with some prejudice for GTO or against GTO, you will hear a very different message. Two people will hear very different things. I'm saying the same fucking thing, by the way. But a GTO guy will interpret it based on his own way. And someone who came before GTO, who used his own brain originally and thought for himself, will certainly hear me say this and see, yeah, you see, he's definitely biased for that. When I don't actually think that it matters, I think that understanding how the game works is the important thing. There's no identity. There's no this is better than that. One who comes with a determined idea that Beyond Poker Guy is right about GTO is wrong, well, you've already missed the point. You've completely missed the point. Because you will basically find arguments that help your preconceived idea. And the point is to destroy all of our preconceived ideas, not strengthen them. And it's not destroy. In fact, it's understanding this great brick wall that we've put around ourselves. We have to take each brick individual and look at it and feel it and touch it, not just smash it with a sledgehammer and say go away, but we have to love it. We have to understand ourselves. That which is already there. I simply say be silent without any sort of prejudice, without any ideology, atheist, theist, for the training sites, against them, live players are good, online players are good, whatever. Without any sort of a priori ideas. Simply be available, open, like a child who knows nothing but is happy to explore, who is curious, but not curious from the perspective I'm going to add more on top of my current belief structure. And listen to these talks simply to alleviate some insecurity about, for example, if I'm using solvers, I want to think about how people that don't use solvers are bad. So I will pick these pieces, or vice versa. It's not about that. This is not meditation. We have to function from a state of not knowing because our previous knowledge that we use to compare with in and of itself is what needs to be questioned. If we know, we are going to distort whatever is being said. Knowledge is the mind. The state of not knowing means that you have to put the mind aside and understand what the mind is. If you believe that listening to me like music, or when you go and you think about poker hands, you watch all your thoughts arise and you see it like music. You don't try to fight some of them and grab some of them and hold on to another one. This is how we expand our mind. This is the way one comes to encounter reality. The encounter is going to be very shattering. This is why it's said for thousands of years that enlightenment is the biggest realization that one can have. And it's not as hard of a thing than people make it out to be. Statistically speaking, very, very, very unlikely to be the case. But statistically speaking, almost no one will even be watching these videos to begin with. It takes a very intelligent individual to be able to listen to someone who is so contradictory. Not me, but in terms of the ideas around mind expansion, because there are so many videos on this. I'm just one, and I'm only talking from poker. As far as actual life situation, there are far more clear, far better teachers than me. Many, as far as well-being. But I'm only bringing this because I want this knowledge to be available to poker players. Because I want them to be able to enjoy. I want us to all take poker as an art. I want us to treat poker as poetry. Not simply as clicking buttons so we can get paid. Enlightenment is simply the realization that all of our knowledge is just a belief. And this self-realization is not that hard to have. It simply requires meditation and awareness in each moment. In fact, both are very important methods. One cannot simply meditate 1 hour a day after a poker session and that be it. When they are playing, they must be present. They must be focused. And if there's a part of us that's daydreaming, there may be a secondary self-punishing mechanism. Say, I know I need to be focused. That's not you. That's not stillness if you're saying I need to be focused. That is another layer of the mind, the self-punishing mechanism. It's going to show that up to now, everything we've known about poker has simply been a game, been a dream, a projection of our own mind. All of our opponents have just been a projection of our own knowledge. We can never know a stronger player than us. Never. In fact, we can never know a player, period, other than ourselves. But it's very important to think about this from the perspective of if we're looking at hand histories of a very strong player, we are not going to be able to understand them. If we talk to them, we are not going to be able to understand them. We can only understand up to our level. And certainly they may be able to help us very much in order to increase our level, but we cannot understand their understanding. We've created a world of our own ideas around ourselves. We've lived in a fucking capsule without any windows. That's how people live. That's how poker players study. One who does not investigate the nature of poker very deeply and how EV is made cannot know the truth of poker. Only someone who is courageous enough to drop all the bullshit preconceptions, who can simply be, sit, pay attention when they are playing. One who can simply be innocent. We must function in a state of not knowing. There's a quote from the Upanishads that says, those who claim to know, you must be aware of them. They know nothing. Those that say they do not know, surrender to them, because there's a possibility of some sort of transformation happening around them, with them, if you get into a communion with them. But if you're listening to me as an intellectual, you will absolutely miss everything I'm saying. Socrates is at the ultimate peak of human wisdom. I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing. Function from that state of not knowing, and it will bring you immense ecstatic experiences and understanding of your opponents far beyond what they can understand. Remember that your opponents are simply playing in a way where they want to feel better about their strategy. They don't actually understand that feeling better has nothing to do with EV in reality. If we can smash this wall in front of us and realize that the game is over for them. The person who is without knowledge is capable of absolute awe. Oh my God, this game is so beautiful, like children. He can dance seeing a rose, seeing a tree. Simply getting to a poker table, he's filled with ecstasy, with love for this game. He doesn't have to go out in the wild and hunt rabbits and deer to eat. He can play this magnificent game and then get money and take it to a market and receive his items. This can be his life. Life is absolutely a mystery. Poker is absolutely a mystery. And knowledge demystifies the entire process, and that's what the poker sites do, is they give this illusory knowledge. And because now we have this knowledge, we have everything. No. Because the one who knows nothing, not that he knows nothing, he has ideas in his memory, but when he is playing, he's functioning from a place of purity beyond his past conditionings, because all of this has been connected. It's no longer just compartmentalized in one area with one set of associations, with one set of ideas in this context. In fact, it all becomes connected. It's as if when we are playing poker, we are simply one cart on a train track. And we are saying, yes, we are here right now. Okay, now we are there in that situation. We're going to do this. But when we find consciousness, we realize that all the knowledge was always within us. Every single bit of it was always connected. A very famous painter named Michelangelo was painting a ceiling at a chapel. He was getting very tired. He got on his back. He was laying down. He was chilling. He had some water. And he noticed a very, very large, heavy-set Italian woman praying in the gospel. The great artist, Mr. Michelangelo, had a good sense of humor as well. And he sat at the scaffold and he started shouting, "I am Jesus Christ. I am Jesus Christ. Listen to me and I will perform miracles for you, darling." And the Italian woman looked up. She grabbed her rosary and answered back, "Shut your mouth. I'm talking to your mother." Think of Michelangelo. Life is like that. It brings many surprises each moment, but we go on missing when we play poker because we're looking for solutions. We're not seeing the vast expanse that it is because there are no solutions. When we say spot, there are just thoughts that arise. So if we simply grab a solution, it means that we are suppressing all the other thoughts. In fact, we might not even be conscious that there are other thoughts. We're so full of expectations, we're so full of these ready-made answers that we go on interpreting whatever we see according to our past knowledge. But we go through this absolutely miraculous game completely dead, dull, dragging these ideas instead of being fresh in the moment, saying, what is this guy doing? What is his timing on this exact turn? Why does he take that much time? What's going on? What is he trying to do to us? We just, GTO, XYZ, da-da-da-da-da. Such stupidity. We have to be like a little child again. We have to become innocent. It is not a question of a method. It is not a question of how. It's more a question of understanding the very process of how the mind functions. And we will gain insight into that by being very aware when we are playing, being very focused. Absolutely no YouTube videos on the side. Absolutely nothing else. Maybe a little bit of music that has no lyrics. I mean extreme focus. And if you are playing 500 hands an hour, my friend, you are lying to yourself. Unless you need rent and maybe there's some other variables, but you're probably lying to yourself. And don't listen to the last part to justify it. I just want to say that obviously in a life situation, if you need food and you have a family and you need to pay for things, that's very different. But of course, you're not going to be able to go the mastery approach very easily. It will be very challenging if you have those things. However, if you have a life situation that allows you to actually play 200-300 hands an hour, your win rate might double or triple, by the way. It's just painful to wait for more hands because you want to accomplish more because you've been told by your education system that doing more makes you a better person. But if you don't understand that you are already perfect and you cannot do anything to feel better, there's no doing that can be done. There can only be a realization that all doing is an illusion. The doer is not real. There's only actions, but there's no one taking the actions. It will be very challenging. There's no barrier between us and reality. It's only when we start looking for solutions, it's only when we have this a priori knowledge of what things are that we create a barrier. There's no real separation past our own beliefs. But there's an idea. I say, well, I don't believe that I don't believe McDonald's is good. I think it's bad for you. And then 2 days later, I'm going and eating it. So I can say the word I believe, but what does that belief really mean? The proof is always in the pudding. There's no barrier. There is only oneness. Reality reveals its secrets to you. It's not like God, a man in the sky. It's simply the nature of reality. So I love you all so much. I'm so happy that you joined me. And we will speak again very soon. Have a very good day, you all. Mwah.